Life can seem really overwhelming and even scary when we're disconnected from our intuition and from the divine and from our own inner light. But when we spark that light up, we can actually feel almost like a guiding hand leading us to the right path for us. Let's talk about how to spark this light of our inner voice today and how to reconnect with the sacred. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Leeor Alexandra. Welcome to the B community. On this channel, we talk about the law of attraction, spirituality, self-development, and so much more. Whenever I say that now, I feel this channeling come in through my body as if my higher self knows it's time to step it up and start to deliver a message. Those words are like code for me to activate my own inner knowing in my higher self. It's really cool. So in today's video, I want to talk about what it feels like to be disconnected from the divine. And I'm going to say the divine, and it's interchangeable for me with the universe, with God, with oneness, with the Almighty, the Alpha and the Omega, the Creator, infinite intelligence. I have several names that I use for it. Whatever feels right to you, please use that. And if you're a person that doesn't feel comfortable with any of those, you can just replace it for the word life or universe. Those are usually neutral terms for people. For me, all terms work because I know that it is all encompassing. And so I like to interchange what I say. So we're going to talk about what it feels like to be disconnected with the divine and how you can connect with the divine, what it feels like to live in connection with it, with the Almighty, and how to live in connection with your deep self, which is also your higher self.
What a beautiful crow.
And how you can use this connection to your higher self and this connection to God to strengthen your own intuition, your inner knowing, and that soft voice that guides you exactly where you are supposed to be. This allows you to live a life that is brave, courageous, beautiful, and so expansive, rather than a life that is, spent being small and afraid. Before we get into today's video, I just want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Audible. So Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place. They have the largest selection of audiobooks ranging from bestsellers to new releases, personal development books, fantasy books, memoirs, everything you could possibly want. They even have meditation programs, sleep talk downs, or exercise programs. They have everything. You guys already know that I've been an Audible member for years, so being a partner with them is such a big deal to me. I get it for the whole year, and I just got my 12 credits. I'm really excited about that. And I listen to Audible all the time while going on a walk, while cleaning my house, while commuting, while at the gym, and I'm always able to learn something new while I'm doing something productive. So if you've been around for a while, you know that one of the books that I always recommend to everybody is The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav, which they have as an audiobook, and I have it in a physical form, in a Kindle form, and also on Audible. So if you want to become closer to your intuition, closer to the divine, and closer to understanding the mystical makeup of this reality, I highly recommend grabbing this book. I listen to it over and over again. I even play it while I sleep to reprogram my mind with all the goodness in there. If you want to check that book out and you haven't already, you can get this book for free on Audible. Just go to audible.com/Leeor or text Leeor to 500-500. You'll even get to keep the book forever. Whatever books you get on Audible, you get to keep them forever, even if you don't continue your membership. I think that's really cool of them. And right now for the holiday season, they have such a good deal. They're giving a special offer of 60% off of your first 3 months. That's only $5.95 a month. My matcha today costs more than that. No matter what you're doing this holiday season, you'll always have the right listen at your fingertips. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this video. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this video. Make sure you give yourself the gift of listening by going to audible.com/Leeor or texting Leeor to 500-500. Mwah! Let's get back into the video. So in the timeline that we're currently in, the majority of humanity has found themselves deeply embedded in their fight, flight, and freeze responses, meaning that we're really deep into the fear response. We're afraid, and who could blame us? We've been bombarded with imagery, and the media has been telling us how scared we should be. And, all these different leaders and our governments and worlds, the United Nations and all these different things just cramming fear rather than solutions down our throats. And we don't know what's right anymore. We don't know what's right and wrong. And I'm not necessarily only talking about this panini that we're all dealing with, that we've been dealing with for nearly 2 years now. It's not necessarily only that. It's all these different catastrophes that we're going through and the way that it's being broadcasted at us all the time. This fear that is being instilled deeply within us is getting us off track with our own intuition, because fear is almost kind of like a blockade between you and your highest self. And when we live through fear, we can't live a life that is guided by God, that is guided by faith, and that's guided by this highest aspect of ourselves. Fear blocks that. Unless, of course, you use fear as a motivating force to get you to do exactly what you're meant to do. Like this chapter of my life, for example, has been all about doing what scares me. So whenever I identify something that makes me feel uncomfortable and scared, I do it anyways. And so in that sense, my fear, my higher self knows that to use my fear as a motivating driver, which is really cool. And that's what I think everybody should do. Personally. So as I was saying, people are very scared and anxious, afraid about what to do about the future and what decisions and choices they should be making for themselves, for their families. And this fear is very, very real, very potent. But believe it or not, it is still an option. I know that might be uncomfortable to hear. I know that might be triggering for some to hear. We've lost loved ones. We've lost people in the world. And it's like this looming monster that we don't know what to do or how to protect ourselves, right? And yet it's still an option. Being afraid is still an option. And seeking out the truth and seeking out the fact that it's not as scary as we have been told it is also an option, right? All of life isn't as scary as we've been told it is, because fear, there's a reason why it's called fear porn. It sells, it gets clicks, it sells advertising. And at the end of the day, you have to understand people's motivations, especially corporations, media, government. Bottom line is the dollar. It's always going to be the dollar. So always follow the money and realize that fear sells, right? Just like sex sells. What I want to share with you today is that there are ways to not let fear be your guiding force anymore, and to instead reconnect with your higher self and with that safe, unconditionally loving place within yourself, that's centered and balanced space, that's connected to God, that's connected to the divine, and that knows that energy is never created nor destroyed, and neither are you. You will continue on and on. All of us will. And we all come from love, and we all return to love, and it's all perfect, no matter how scary it might seem on the outside. So fear is a real entity, and we can choose to follow it. We can choose to worship fear, which is what they want us to do, right? We can choose to feed it with our attention and emotions and energy and time. Or we can choose to reconnect with the light, with the positive, with faith. It's usually when we forget our connection to the divine, when we forget that we are always connected to God, that's when we feel most afraid. That's when we feel most alone. It's like there's nobody around us. We feel so alone. We feel so scared. And we think that we're truly alone. And we forget that we are surrounded by this loving force that wants the best for us and that's always there for us, waiting for us to speak to it, to decree, to plead, to pray. So when we live in fear, we are disconnected from God, or from whatever other name you want to give this energy. And this feels like a contraction, right? This feels like getting smaller. This feels like anxiety. It feels like replaying the possibility. Did it just start raining? Replaying the possibility of something bad happening over and over and over again. And it feels like praying for the worst to happen, really. Living in disconnection from God feels so lonely. It feels meaningless. It feels gray, it feels dark, and life might be extremely overwhelming in this state of mind. After all, we're just this small human in this big world, with all these horrific things happening. What can we do, right? Well, you can do a lot, and that all starts with coming back to a place where you are in connection with your intuition, with your inner knowing, with your deep self, and with the divine, with the creator. Because when we connect to the infinite, when we live in tune with the infinite, when we remember that we in the infinite are always one, and wherever we are in the planet, and however small or big we're feeling, we are always a part of this expansive and beautiful love of the Creator and that we're never forgotten, we live completely differently from the ones who are living in perpetual fear. And though I don't blame them, I'll remind you once again that this is a choice. And so if we want to live in alignment with our highest potential and feeling grateful and elated more moments than not, we have to actively call that in. We have to do things that make that happen. And that's what I want to talk about today. So making your life decisions based on faith and based on this connection with the divine, this energy that's filled with light and creation, that's big and expansive rather than small and scared. That's what's going to bring you back into alignment, to reconnect you with your intuition. So in the last few years, I've strengthened my intuition so much, to such a high degree, that I hear it loud and clear these days. I know when something is meant for me and when it's not. That comes with experience, that comes with wisdom and time, of course, but it's also with this working with this deep self. I remember that at all times I'm connected to infinite intelligence and can just still myself and quiet everything around me and connect to that aspect of myself and receive the guidance that I need. And I know exactly what's going to happen and I know exactly where I need to go. So today I want to give you very practical ways to start connecting to the divine and to your deep self and to your inner wisdom, your inner knowing, so that you can check out of the physical, the exoteric for a little bit and check into the esoteric, to the mystical, to the internal, to the unseen, a place where creation abounds. Woo! That was a little sermon I gave right there. Look how green my matcha is today. All right, so I have 6 things that I believe will help make your life more mystical, more esoteric, more spiritual, and connect you with that aspect of yourself even more. You can do one of these, you can do all of these, it's going to benefit you. So let's start with number 1, which is communion with the divine. So that is basically connecting with whatever energy it is that you're connecting to, which I think ultimately is always God. That's the top of the pyramid. So through, let's say, meditation, let's say through prayer, silence, quiet, isolation, just sitting and going internal. So you shut off the external stimulation, perhaps covering your eyes, dimming the room, making everything dark, and you go inside and you just see what's there and you listen and you just focus on the breath. You quiet the body, you quiet the mind, and you empty and you empty and you empty. And the best times to do this is in the morning, right when you wake up, or at night, right before you go to bed. Now, in this communion, it could be as simple as sitting down on the floor and just closing your eyes and seeing what's in the internal world and just quieting everything, and then honestly receiving some sort of message. Eventually, most of us are going to receive some sort of message and then trusting that message. However, if you find it a little bit more difficult, or you want a little bit more of an intentional way to connect to the divine, I recommend creating some sort of ritual for yourself. So for example, what I would do, let's say if I were really wanting to connect with my higher self, I really needed some guidance. I was having a hard time and I needed some sort of direction. What I would do is I would do a ritual. I would get up super early and go catch the sunrise at the beach, or I'd go for the sunset at the beach. I would set myself up very intentionally, a clean blanket. I would wear ritualistic colors like all white, which clears the auric field. I would put crystals around me that have to do with intention. I would bring a journal. I would bring musical instruments. I would bring an offering like tobacco or sage or some seashells or something like that. And then I'd meditate and I'd get really quiet, and then I would ask for what I want, which is usually some guidance or a sign. And sometimes I'll get the answer right then and there. Other times I'll receive the answer through other people or resources, or something popping out at me repeatedly. So just some sort of ritual. And ritual is basically just getting out of the ordinary and stepping into the extraordinary for a bit, creating a solid boundary between your mundane life and your sacred life, between the profane and the pure. And there are millions of ways to do this, and your culture might have its own way of getting into ceremony. My culture definitely does, but I basically follow the perennial philosophy in which I see what sticks out to me from all these different religions and all these different cultures and what feels right to me, and I do that. So, incorporating the elements it comes from a lot of indigenous cultures, and that feels right to me. So that's what I would do. I also have learned recently that singing to the elements or singing to God, whatever song it is, can kind of put you into a ritualistic flow trance-like state. Mantras do this really well as well, repeating a mantra over and over again, maybe 108 times like the Buddhists do. So there's different ways of connecting in that sense. The second way that you can connect to the divine and connect to your intuition is by disconnecting from external decision makers. So what are external decision makers? That is asking other people to make a decision for you. That is following what everybody else is doing, so following the herd. Very small example of what I did today. Like I'm in the process of buying some new workout equipment, and I wanted some new ankle weights, and I was gonna get the Bala ones because that's what all my personal trainers always used. But I realized that I don't want to do everything that everybody else does, and then I went and found ones on my own. Just not following the pack without solid reason. Like if it is the best out there on the market and you know it and you trust that, sure, right? And that's a very small thing, but it's also like not asking people to make your decisions for you. Don't ask your girlfriends if you should text your crush or not. Do it if you want to do it, okay? You know, it's always good to get to receive wisdom from wisdom keepers such as grandparents and our parents. They do have wisdom, but it's also very important to connect to your own inner wisdom. So this next thing, I don't think I've ever spoken about this potent way to connect to the divine and to connect to your intuition. I've been doing it for years, but I just remembered it again when I was on my retreat in Costa Rica and we were doing something similar with the Akashic Records. So basically it's like these yes-no meditations. So you develop your intuition. Sorry, my hair is not flipping to the right way. You develop your intuition by getting into meditation and then beginning to ask yourself yes/no questions that you already know the answer to. So for example, am I 28 years old? Yes or no, right? So you sit in meditation, I know what the answer is, and I wait to feel a yes or a no. And then I feel what a yes feels like in my body and I feel what a no feels like. And I do this for quite a while. So every day in your meditation, in your daily meditation, ask yourself a few questions that you already know the answer to and that they're yes or no questions. That way you can become more familiar with what a yes feels like and what a no feels like. After some time, you can start to ask your intuition, your deep self, questions that you don't know the answer to. And then a yes or a no will pop up. You're not going to trust it at first, but if you really do build this connection with your intuition, over time, you'll begin to trust yourself more and more. So start to ask yourself questions, and I say act on them in the beginning. Sometimes in the beginning you might be wrong, but you're going to feel more and more what feels right and what doesn't, right? What feels like the truth. And you're going to see what these answers feel like in your body. This is a really potent way of developing your intuition. And so I would start asking questions that are not that important, like, should I get a sandwich today? Yes or no? Should I wear a raincoat today? Yes or no? And then maybe moving to questions such as, is it going to rain today? Yes or no? And then not checking and just seeing what happens, right? And developing little by little that strengthening that intuition. These emotions are going to feel certain ways in your body. A yes usually feels very opening to me, and a no, even if it's a positive no, feels a little bit more contracting to me in my body. But that could be different for you. So the fourth tip I have for you for connecting with your intuition and that deep self, that divine, is to notice when you are being guided. So this requires mindfulness and awareness. It requires a certain awakeness, alertness in your daily life so that you're noticing signs, synchronicities, omens, and you're noticing the guidance. So maybe a neighbor comes and recommends that you read a certain book, right? Or you see a word repeating a few times. Those are little guides from your deep self and from the creator. But it's a little guide to tell you where to go next, what your next step is, or what you should be looking into. So for me, the way that it feels like for me is honestly almost like I have this guiding hand where I won't turn down the wrong street because I'm kind of gently being nudged to the right or to the left. It's very interesting, and it came over time, over working with my intuition and really being in communion with God for quite a while. Let me know if you've ever felt that way, felt yourself kind of like gently being nudged towards certain things. And this could be energetically, you don't have to physically feel it. You're gently nudged to call somebody, right? You feel this knowing that like somebody comes up in your brain. That's an intuition, that's a guidance. So notice those. The more that you notice them and the more that you act on them, the more your intuition and your deep self will send you these hits to continue in that path. The fifth and final tip I have for today's video on creating that connection with the deep self and never feeling stuck again is to see through divine eyes. Okay, so a lot of times in our reality, in our day-to-day lives, we are up against these big dragons and these challenges, and we see them as so big because we see them through human eyes. And we forget that we can take a step back and try on the eyes of the divine and see the problem through a bigger lens, right? Scoped out. Remembering that you have God on your side and that God can take care of all of your troubles, and giving your troubles up to the divine is going to put you into that space where it's not just you anymore taking care of this, it's you plus your team of light. Nothing is too big, nothing is too small. You can give it all up to the universe. You can let it all go and know that it's going to be taken care of for you. Now, my favorite story, I know I've shared this before, but one of my favorite stories to put this into perspective of how you can see how the divine works when you have a problem is, let's say that you wake up in the morning and you want to see, is my connection with manifesting with the universe, with God, with my deep self, with my higher self, is it strong today? I want to see an orange today. Show me an orange. And you say this and you set an intention to see an orange. And then you go to work and there's a bowl of oranges on the table, right? In the break room. And your human mind is like, well, somebody went out and bought these oranges before I set my intention. Somebody decided yesterday to bring these oranges in, so it has nothing to do with what I wanted. So this sign doesn't count. But divine eyes, somebody who works with the unseen, invisible worlds, knows that God is not bound by time nor space. And therefore, everything that we want to happen can happen regardless if it needs weeks of preparation in order to happen. Does that make sense? So those are today's tips for connecting with your intuition and reconnecting with the divine. Let me know if you like this video. Let me know which step spoke to you the most and what you already use. And if you have your own tips, you're gonna really help somebody who's scrolling through the comments below. It also really helps me if you would thumbs up this video, leave a comment just to tell me that you love me, and I'll tell you I love you back because I do. And subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much, by the way, for 500,000. I haven't made a video talking about that yet, but thank you. It's been almost 5 years, and it's just, I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it. Just thank you for being here, however long you've been here. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And thanks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, keep your vibrations way up. Bye.